Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This is going to be a good one. Today we're going to check out how I reuse my scenes in multiple projects. I'll be using UI as an example. Let's get started. A huge shout out and thank you to everyone who's supported me on my YouTube journey so far. I've hit another milestone, just over 1,000 subscribers. This is incredible, and honestly, I never imagined I'd be making videos that you would enjoy. But here I am, still creating, and your support keeps me going. A special shout out to @AlexGT5VH, my 1000 subscriber. I truly appreciate it. And to everyone who watches my videos but hasn't subscribed yet, your views and likes mean a lot to me too. Now, let's get into today's video. I love to do game jams, so I try to do at least one game jam every month. That way I can try out new ideas and practice what I've been learning from all those dedicated Godot YouTubers out there. But lately, I've been thinking, I really need to take my prototyping workflow to the next level. Seriously, it quickly becomes really tiresome when I have to keep writing the same code and making the same scenes over and over for each game that I make. I'm sure that's something that everyone watching can relate to. Let's take UI as an example. There has to be an easier way to create a start menu and options menu that I could use over multiple projects. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Maybe I could just find a template project and use that. But what would really be cooler is if I took all the stuff that I've been learning from all those YouTubers, together with my own research and the Godot documentation, and make scenes that I could reuse over multiple projects. That way, I would have full control and understanding of the code and know exactly how everything works in the project. Keep watching and I'll share with you my process, and maybe you can even integrate some of it into your own workflow. Let's get started. So here I have two scenes, a start menu and an options menu. By the way, I'm using this really cool color palette I found on lowspec.com called Pollen8 by Conker. Why? Well, I think if I stick to using color palettes when prototyping, it could improve the look of my projects. I mean, art is not really one of my strong points, so I need all the help that I can get. Okay, so here's how the scene works. When I click play, a cool swirl transition plays and the start menu is shown. If I click on the options button, the game transitions to the options menu. So far so good, right? Clicking on the back menu returns me to the start menu. Really simple. Let's take a closer look at the code. I won't go into much detail here because I want to keep this short and sweet, but it's important for me to explain this. It will all make sense later. I added a script to the UI start menu control node and created onReady variables for the start button, the start select sound effect, and the start transition animation player. When the game starts, in the ready function, I call grab focus on the start button and play the transition animation. I also set up an options button pressed signal for when the options button is pressed to change the scene to the options scene by using getTree, change scene to file, and passed in the location of the options scene in the file system. I also set up focus entered signals for each of the buttons and played the button SFX when focus is entered for each of the buttons. That's why the button sound is played when the game starts. Looking at it now, it seems a bit weird to play the sound at the start, but for now, let's just overlook that. The options scene works in the exact same way. I added another script to the UI options menu control node and got the necessary onReady variables. In the ready function, I called grab focus on the options 1 button, played the transition animation, set up the focus entered signals for each of the buttons, then connected an on back button pressed signal to the script, where I changed to the start scene by using getTree.change scene to file and passed in the location of the start scene in the file system. Now we have a really basic working menu UI system. Okay, for those of you wondering about my really poor game design choice to use multiple scripts and rewrite the code in multiple places, first, listen to my explanation for why I chose to do things like this. And if anyone has more optimized suggestions, please share them in the comments. I would love to hear your ideas. First up, for this to work smoothly, It's crucial to keep all the scenes and their related assets neatly organized. Because, as far as I'm aware, Godot 4.4 does not have an easy way to manage scene dependencies between projects. By placing all the associated files like scripts, textures, and audio into a single dedicated folder, I can ensure that all dependencies are in one place. This makes it easier to manage and transfer them between projects without missing any crucial components. Think of it as creating a self-contained package for each scene. For this reason, I would not use systems like autoloads or any complex dependencies, like I would suggest normally. I'm not saying that they cannot be used. I just prefer not to use them in this case. That's why I used two separate scripts to handle the start scene and the option scene. Now that I have all the assets organized, the next step is really straightforward. Copy the dedicated folder into the project's directory. You can do this by either copy and pasting it in or simply dragging in the folder into the file system of your new project. This will maintain the relative paths and ensures that the scene functions correctly in your new project. After copying, you'll see your scene and assets ready to use. This works fine for the UI in this case, but more complex scenes like a player controller may not work as smoothly because of its dependencies. Let's take a look. I have also added a player scene to the game that has input dependencies. If I run the scene without addressing the dependencies, which in this case is setting up the player input in the input settings as it is set up in the original script, I will receive errors, which is easily resolved by setting up the input. Similarly, if files get moved around in the file system that were dependencies of the original scene, that too will cause errors. So it's very important to keep everything organized for this to work. So a quick recap. First, Godot 4 doesn't have a system for managing scenes and their dependencies between projects. So it's up to you to do the work. Be careful to have all your files in one main folder that can be imported into your project. When creating scenes that you know will be used in other projects, it's important to keep things organized. I know that I may be sounding like a broken record here, but I cannot stress this enough. You could make mental notes or even comments in your code to point out the required dependencies. Or in an extreme case, you could actually write code that will remind you to set up the necessary dependencies. Secondly, keep things simple. Remember, this is just a base, a starting point that will help you jumpstart your prototyping workflow. And most importantly, remember to just have fun. Remember why we make games: to express ourselves, to escape the hassles of daily life, or just to enjoy the challenge of being creative. Thanks for watching. We discussed a lot today. Core mechanics with no gimmicks. I do hope this video was helpful. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you know when I upload another video. And speaking of my other videos, here's that cool video where I showed you how to make that transition scene using a shader. This has been ReUse Games.